good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar, which is all about purpose-driven marketing strategies in this post-pandemic world. To kick this off, I think the first thing I want to do is introduce myself and Lynette. So I am the CEO of a creative agency called BLKJ Havas. It's an agency where very much this agenda is very much embedded in us and this whole aspect around meaningful brands. But actually really excited to introduce Lynette. Lynette is the Deputy Chief Executive Officer of Planning and Corporate Development of National Arts Council. But one thing we both share is we both have this impetus about creating brands with a purpose. And for as long as I've known Lynette, from her time that she started with SRT to Singapore Tourism Board, and obviously what she's championing now, that is very much in her core. So welcome, Lynette.
Thank you, Rowena, and a very good morning to everybody. It's lovely to be in this webinar. Thank you.
Sure. So I think what we want to do is, to kick this off, I want to just share that this particular webinar today is a joint initiative between the Association of Advertising and Marketing and Mediacorp. And if for those of you who are not members of the Association of Advertising and Marketing, there is a lot that we are behind from training programs. You'll hear a little bit more about that at the end, and some of the award shows that we have, and obviously, thought leadership programs. So please come forward and join. It's really exciting. And I think to get to know everyone a little bit more, we just want to take a minute and have this poll out there and kind of get a feel from all of y'all on your thoughts. So if you can just answer that, that would be great. It's just for us to get to know you guys a little better. Okay, great. So that's interesting. I think we all know this, right? This whole aspect around the shift that the pandemic has made all of us, rethink whether we are a brand, whether we are consumers even. So this is exactly in line with what we're talking about today. Yep, so today's topic we're going to be sharing, or we're going to have a discussion around in this next 1 hour, is around, brand purpose built on values, right? And really finding your why. And what we are aiming to do, and we are hoping to do out of this, is both Lynette and myself, we're hoping to just share some of our thoughts and really some points to start thinking about, and really hearing from you guys with your questions later, and seeing how we collectively can help each other. So I think very as we mentioned, it's why is this so important, right? To find your why in this post-COVID world, and that's exactly what we're talking about. And we've all heard this from Lennon, that sometimes weeks seem like decades. It's been a harrowing 2 years for businesses of all sizes. But through it, we've all learned to adapt, survive, and thrive on our feet. In fact, many of us, we've been spending the last few weeks or months thinking about how do we position ourselves moving forward. And which is why we think it's an important juncture in our journey, right? To really evaluate what it could mean to be purpose-driven. What does it mean to be purpose-driven, right, for our brands? And I'm sure all of y'all, we've heard this. I have a lot of clients coming in and asking, looking at the economic outlook and thinking, being purpose-driven is great, but maybe later, maybe now is not the time to jump on this trend of being purposeful. Questions like, will the commitment be worth it? Is there going to really be an increase in my ROI? How much effort will it take to pivot and align on a purpose-driven strategy for everyone? They're all understandable issues or questions. But that's exactly the thinking that we want to change, right? Because we believe that in this battle of growth, purpose actually can be a game changer in this battle of sameness and tons of offers and everything we see, right? We think purpose actually can play this really cool role. And I think just to kick this off, I thought it'd be nice to hear a bit from Lynette on what your thoughts are on purpose, for the National Arts Council, just to kick this discussion off.
Sure, thank you, Rowena. I guess for the National Arts Council, our purpose really is about sharing the joy and inspiration and the amazing benefits that the arts have on our lives. And there's two key audiences there in a way. First of all, we would like all Singaporeans to understand the value of the arts and to participate and engage in the arts. And of course, the other piece really is about showing the world the amazing artists that we have in Singapore. So the other part of our purpose is really about building the artistic community and helping them develop as artists and to showcase them not just to Singaporeans and to the world. So the purpose is really about bringing the value of the arts to the lives of people in Singapore and the world.
Fantastic.
Mm. And I think there were a couple of questions we asked ourselves at Rowena, and as well as I saw some questions in the chat. What is purpose all about? If I'm a commercial brand, right? And I think we go back to what brands do essentially. At the end of the day, many are commercial companies and it's profit driven. And I would say if you look back at brands 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it's really 100% is really about bottom line and profit driven. But I think the world has changed tremendously now. There are many conversations about ESG, especially I think heightened by COVID, where really I think the frailty of life and there has to be greater purpose besides work and commerce. So really, when brands build in purpose, I think as marketeers, and as I know many of you are marketeers in this conversation here, it's really about distinguishing what you stand for, distinguishing your brand, and having a meaningful conversation with your audience. And I know many would ask, and I asked myself this and the team as well when we were developing our purpose. My goodness, how do we start? And I would say there's a framework. I think one would be really dig down deep and ask the who question, which is what defines your brand? And the second one is really what is your point of view? And this is very much driven by the values that your company and your brand holds dear. And we will talk a little bit about this later on. But I think one of the very, very powerful impact when a brand thinks about purpose is not just about building the relationship with the audience. It's really suddenly there's a very, very strong rallying point within the organization that it is really not just about commercial end game, it's really about pulling the whole organization together to do something good.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah.
And yes, Rowena and I discussed as well, how can we pull together some frameworks to share with all of you? And we thought what the UN did with their sustainability development goals was really useful. So if you look across these 17 points, they're all very, very interesting starting points for brand marketeers to have a conversation with your colleagues, whether they're from product or from sales or from management to, what is an area that we would like to own or what is an area that has great relevance to what we do as a brand. So what we wanted to say was this is a really useful starting point.
Absolutely. And I mean, from there, we start probing, right? The why, like, why even have a brand purpose, right? So we talked about like what we think, why, right? And even looking at the stats, supporting what Lynette talked about, right? In terms of the why, what we see is that it went from 42% of companies who feel that sense of purpose within their vision and mission was shown to outperform the financial markets to where we are today, where 69% of people who are all challenged the same way, you know, how do I get back my profit? How do I get back my market share after these 2 years? They all believe that brands must positively change this world. So I think the bottom line is purpose seems to matter even more in this post-pandemic world, right? And they want to put their money, consumers want to put their money behind brands that positively change this world. So what's changed, right? What actually has changed and has shocked the system and catalyzed people's desire to make their lives count, you know, and really given rise to this pivot that we are seeing in all aspects of people's life, from personal to professional to overnight business transformations. And we're seeing this across so many themes. We're going to explore a few, but we see this across quite a few. And this shift in consumer behavior to be more purpose-driven, right? That they vote with their money and they expect brands to have a positive social impact, to prioritize the environment and their sustainability efforts, to maybe seek to make healthier choices for themselves. So gone is this whole thing about consumerism. We are all shifting into this era of the conscientious consumer. So that's what we're dealing with, the consumer who is conscientious, who's looking out for these points, you know. And of course, with that, we all feel that, okay, now you start finding the why, what purpose can your brand stand for? And you must follow through to what is authentic to you, right? And authenticity is something Lynette and I talked about a lot, which is, you know, how do you make sure that what you stand for, right, in a way that is authentic for it? And we all know it doesn't happen overnight. And, you know, and it's like, oh my God, it's so hard to implement, right? This purpose-driven strategy overnight. And I think we thought that just to kind of put a bit of a framework again, maybe we'll just put some steps. And, you know, and it, of course, it starts with the attitudinal shift, right? Everyone, as Lynette talked about, both internally have to have, right, for that purpose as a company. And maybe, you know, this thought around how to start implementing purpose. And we have a couple of thoughts. And maybe, Lynette, you can kick this off, the whole thing about the changing definition of success.
Yeah, so we thought there were 3 key things to look out for when we are looking at purpose-driven marketing. One is really, well, we are a KPI-driven society, and success for many brands, commercial brands, really is about the bottom line. But we wanted to introduce a new thought, and that is about today, really, success is not just about a profitability. Is really, if you look at purpose, it's about what good can you bring to different facets of society. And yesterday, when we were talking through the deck, we were also talking about what in your community, what good can you bring to the community. So if you look at the customer and the employee, it's really about bringing meaning and relevance to what the customer cares about, and for the employee as well. We talked about earlier about how when there's clear purpose, the organization finds a deeper value to be engaged and beyond just the bottom line.
Yeah, absolutely.
And again, I think we talked about the framework and the 17 aspects of purpose. And again, these are really, really good points here. For example, there's a lot of discussion today, especially in Singapore, about bringing quality education to all facets and aspects of society, or really today, the S word, which is really about sustainability and climate action. So there's a lot of very good information here. So do take a look, go onto the UN site and look at the many, much information they have there on the developmental goals.
Yep.
Okay. I think as marketeers, we believe strongly that marketing has the power to change culture, but at the same time, to be relevant and sensitive, marketing must also reflect culture. And we thought this was a very interesting example. Critics might say that, hey, where's the scale in this? But I think what we're trying to say is that when you're a big brand and you have the voice, how do you use your reach and your platform to put forth a message? So we have a great example here from Coldplay, who believe very much in sustainability. And within the band themselves, they had a great debate before they started their new tour on how can they actually bring forth the things and the values they believe in and to integrate it into their product, the experience of the tour.
This tour is really focusing on sustainability, and we're trying to kind of reduce carbon as much as possible. We know Costa Rica is actually a great place to start.
Coldplay is installing these kinetic dance floors in all of their concerts. The more people jump and dance to their music, the more energy is created to power the show.
Phil, our fifth member, got quite cross with me because he said, no, it's just too difficult.
Yeah.
But in fact, what happened when we said we don't want to tour again until it's better environmentally, was so many people contacted us, people who made the flooring or who worked out how to get energy from bikes.
The planet is in crisis, and we know that what we do and what we have the privilege of traveling around, but we know that there are decisions that we can make that can alleviate some of the strain that we put on the environment.
So Coldplay fans here in Costa Rica have been waiting years and years and years for the show. And a lot of people ask themselves, why did they choose one of the smallest countries in Central America for such a big show, for one of the biggest fans in the whole world? There's a very, very important answer to that question. Costa Rica's energy grid.
Yep. So, I mean, that's really interesting. And I love that example. And I love the influence. So whether it's the government, whether it's popular culture, you know, really these have really, like, you know, kind of influences we talked about, right? The definition of success, what Lynette was sharing. And then, of course, we talk a bit about transparency, which is important. And I think unlike, you know, before, the whole idea of imperfection, but when when you're executing your purpose-driven roadmap, right, it shouldn't be a barrier for you to start. Sometimes it'll be like, oh my God, if they look at what I'm doing today, they'll say, where do you stand in this conversation? But I think the point is, if you put yourself out there and you say that we're taking efforts over time to get better, and you're transparent about it, to buy empathy and time for your company. And, you know, examples, like we see this all around us, right? Small acts, people say it's small acts. So for example, KFC saying no to straws is an example. And, you know, it's all about, don't just stop here, what's next? And it's a nice way to also involve our consumers and customers, you know, so you don't treat it as a marketing gimmick, but more like a transformation. And you invite people to share too, and internally too. I mean, the staff also with this, because we realize how important our employees are, right, in this conversation. And, you know, I think just wanted to spotlight, no, I think Google's done this wonderful job in committing and following through with their purpose. So, for example, you know, something very close to our hearts, you know, this whole thing around women empowerment. Not only they internally restructured, right, but they have programs that address it and create products that empower it. So true, right? I mean, if the products are consumed by both women and male, then of course they have to be, you know, all in terms of discussing something like this. And I think this is a great quote. And actually our friends from Mediacorp were sharing it the other day with us, which is that if people believe they will share values, they share values with a company, they will stay loyal to a brand. So if you break down that whole purpose, if that word is too daunting for you, even it's just really about sharing your values. And if you share your values with your customers, with your employees, their loyalty is a lot longer, right? They'll stay loyal to you. And we've seen this around us. It's been proven, you know. And I mean, the whole thing that's important also is to think through, and it's a commitment, right, with baby steps. And maybe Lynette, you know, you want to chat a little bit about this because you started with this, right, when we were discussing about purpose.
Yes. Yes, my mic is on. I think, well, as a marketeer, we talked about how it's always very profit driven, and definitely the bottom line is important. And very often there's a lot of pressure on to drive sales. It's really about discounts and offers and promos. I guess we are not saying don't do that, because that's important as well. But on top of that, add in the layer of purpose and values to really communicate what your brand stands for, and to drive that engagement and that relevance and that relationship with your customer based on what you believe in.
Yeah.
Can we drive the next slide?
Yeah, sorry.
So in terms of bringing it alive, I'm just going to bring it back to a small example at the National Arts Council. At the National Arts Council, where I'm from, really our purpose is about communicating the value and the power of the arts on people's lives. And for that, it's not just about for the consumer, it's really about how can we showcase and work with the artists to help them develop their works. So when the pandemic hit, it was really, really, really difficult for the artists and the arts community. And I think there were many conversations about the E word, which was, it was really a big existential crisis for many artists, because the whole purpose of being an artist is to perform and to showcase your works to a crowd, to an audience, and suddenly they just couldn't do that. So at the National Arts Council, our work and our purpose is really to help grow the industry and to show the power of the arts. And so with that, the team came up with an idea that, how can we turn this on the head, and how can we, despite the constraints, how can we help the artists bring their work and to bring joy to Singaporeans? So the team started what they call a movement, and the movement was really about sensitizing everyone in Singapore that, hey, watching a play or attending the arts is not just going into a theater. There is culture and there's the beauty of the arts anywhere and everywhere in Singapore. And so with that big idea, the team actually worked with many, many different artists and many, many different arts groups to have a discussion on how we can actually bring them online in many, many different ways. And I know as marketeers, budgets are always a constraint. And so it was a very social first and of course, digital first campaign. And also because digital allowed the platform for the artists to perform and to showcase their works in a very different way. So there were close to 1,000 posts showcasing the artists and their works to Singaporeans. And so we have a little video to actually show you how that work was actually brought forth.
Transit. I'm in transit.
Yeah, I just wanted to, just at this juncture, because, what we're going to do is we're showing you some examples. So this is a great one from the National Arts Council. But feel free to, jump in with your questions in the chat also as we're going through, because we'd love to be able to answer some of them after this. So the next example I'm just going to share is sorry. Yeah, it's really this thing about how, sorry. Yeah, it's like necessity is the, sorry, I think I gotta pause this, then it'll stop. Okay, so really this thing around how we all know, right? Necessity is also the mother of invention. So when Singapore was threatened with its food security because of the pandemic, I'm so proud, right, of how food innovation was propelled forward. And suddenly we see so many brands that are out there that have set up to help reduce carbon footprint of eating meat. Homegrown brands, actually, which is something I'm so excited about. Brands like Tyndall, Float Foods, Shock Meats. And they're the ones who have actually introduced plant-based meat products here. How many restaurants have we gone into where impossible meat has become a thing, right? And also not just here, but from Singapore outside to the rest of the world. So it's really exciting how, if you think about it, like it actually gives rise to new opportunities, diversification, new product lines. So that's really exciting. Something else that I thought was a really nice example to share. We all know Mediacorp, right? I mean, and Mediacorp's purpose is really for the nation, right? It's for Singaporeans and giving our local talent a platform. And this is a really, really nice idea of something that was done. And I think it's a great way to show purpose. I'm going to show the video and then I'll talk about that.
Arts and entertainment industries have been hurt by the COVID-19 outbreak.
We are not able to bus in the streets because if we bus, we might create a cluster. Disappear. How am I supposed to tell you? It's not a very minor problem. It's like major. There's one place where music never left. Commercials.
Go big on savings at Harvey Norman's.
With brands looking to increase media exposure and reduce production costs, Mediacorp, a national media network, found a business solution to help out, giving brands what they want and buskers what we need. Presenting Bus Commercials, a new format of advertising that gives buskers a new stage. A platform that connects over 350 local buskers like me to world-famous brands, equipping us to write, perform, and engineer promotional songs, so we earn 100% of the production cost.
Take really talented buskers who are hungry to perform, then we pair them with brands that are seeking catchy commercials, and boom.
Aren't you tired of the same old breakfast? Find solutions for that. Ain't got nothing better than twisted risers on the pancake platters. That's facts. Deliciously made, the KFC's original recipe, chicken fillet. Make every morning and boring with KFC breakfast. Gotta make every morning and boring with KFC breakfast. Every morning and boring with KFC breakfast. And boring morning, oh, grab yours now.
Sit off, dip it in a sauce, pop it in your mouth. Pizza Hut Christmas cheesy pie， 一切都没准备好，今天都让 Amazon 代劳。It's the most powerful 5G network, can't you tell?
Mediacorp bus commercial starred local busker Ralph Alvin.
Genesis Kia
X-Low.
Bus commercial not only help us, but our fellow buskers.
It's a great opportunity for me to put my name out there.
Our pilot campaign with the buskers did great to boost Pizza Hut's brand recall and sales.
A new format of advertising called bus commercials. What is that? I love it. I love it.
So as long as commercials are around, we buskers will be too.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is them. This is Mediacorp, obviously using their platform for good, back to their purpose, and actually, I mean, giving the buskers a whole new line of income, right? So bus commercials, great idea. Another example from Great Eastern, we all know perhaps the Great Eastern Women's Run, but actually that purpose of empowering women's health goes beyond just this widely popular annual marathon. They've evolved it into a community for health tips for women, stories of inspiration, and even crafted products made for women. So purpose can actually take the form, as we said, of a community too, right? If you look at this. Another example, I'm sure everyone knows the Standard Chartered Here for Good. They've put their purpose front center of its business. So their motto of Here for Good, it stretches into the kind of products and approach to banking inclusion in underdeveloped regions around the world. It's a great example of, purpose being put into action. So if you look at some of these examples out here, so it's here in Singapore, here everywhere else in the world. So they've actually done that and permeated it through their products and solutions. And I mean, the last example we wanted to share before we also get some questions so we can answer is something extremely close to Lynette and my heart. So then, Lynette, you want to kick this off, talk a bit about it, the background, etc.
Sure. This is a little project that Rowena and I worked on that I think we were very passionate about it because it's a topic very close to my heart. I feel very strongly about supporting local artists and local brands. So this was in my former incarnation when I was working with the Singapore Brand Office and the Singapore Tourism Board. The brand purpose was really about turning possibilities into reality for Singapore and for a better world. So when we were thinking, how do we bring the brand alive? We thought, okay, it's not just about showcasing Singaporeans from many different facets of life, but we also discussed and thought about how can we work with emerging local brands. How can we tell their story and showcase their passion? Because their passion drives their work, and there was such a nice synergy with Passion Made Possible. And can we think about giving them a platform where the small brands and their voices could be heard? So it really began from that thought. And I think the key point we want to make in this case study is that sometimes it begins with a small thought, but it takes a lot of work, and the work is best done when we bring in good partners, and it's really about coalition. So this piece of work actually pulled together close to 5 and 6 different associations, from the Furniture Association to the Food Associations to the SME Association, to bring all of them together. On one level, they were competitors, but when we went into the pandemic, this became an even more critical platform where it was really about giving voice to the small brands and telling their stories and starting a movement to get Singaporeans to know local brands, to support local brands, and to buy local brands. And I think this is where I think purpose and profit comes in. So while Rowena and a very talented team developed this campaign, and the products you will see really ranged from milk bottles for nursing mothers to swimsuits to local scents. It was very eclectic range of brands, but all put together by the idea that in Singapore, there's a lot of passion behind with brands, and every piece of product, whether it's a milk bottle or whether it's an egg tart, is crafted and made with passion. Would like to highlight that really it began small. It was very digitally driven. And Rowena, please jump in.
Yes, I think we're just going to show you a really nice compilation video of it, right? But the one thing I think Lynette and I talked about as we were doing this was, I know a lot of times people get nervous and say, I don't have a lot of budgets. You show me Standard Chartered, it's such a big brand, you know, but we wanted to, in this, you'll see a range, right? And one of the things I want you to see when you see the video is that sometimes some brands choose to champion it and just go purely on social, and they use social as that platform to do it. Some brands decide that they use a mix. Perhaps they do, you know, they might want to set up a podcast series, you know. So the point is that it doesn't mean if you want to share your values out there, it means you necessarily need big budgets. It doesn't mean that. It means you have to be clever, you have to be present. What I love so much, and what both Lynette and I like, is how the associations came together. And at the end, we ended up with it's like really one of these better together stories, because you know, a classic brand would say, oh my God, it's competitive, you know, I'm kind of like competing with the other players, right? In this, but the reality is, when you look left, you look right, you realize, hey, actually, if we come together, we can be stronger, because we can collectively do this, and it can, like, you know, we can go up, and we step up from this, right? So for example, the example we shared earlier, where we talked about all these plant-based food players, you know, with Singapore Food Agency as an example, they do various things out there on an ongoing level, so you can participate and be one of them. And obviously that means that your cost of investment is a lot lower because it's shared. You know, so I think it's important to think about. Maybe I'll play the video and then we can have a conversation and hear some of your questions too. Sorry, I'm hearing that there's a problem with the sound. Gonna try this again.
Or we can post the link.
You hear?
I think there's a little bit of a sound problem.
Okay, let's take some questions. I'll try and get the sound fixed. Just give me 1 second. Let me see what I can do to post the link. Just one
I would
second.
like to perhaps jump in to talk about small brands, emerging brands, and I think what Rowena and I realized was the power of a community is very important. So for example, if you are a small bakery on a street and you're thinking, how do I marry purpose into my brand and how do I get started? On that street, probably there are many other merchants and many other shopkeepers or shops and brands. So instead of thinking of them as competitors, perhaps the question is how can you come together as a community and to really come together and find a common purpose, which is really about bringing life and commerce back into that community on that street and come together to form a little campaign. So that was really what we did with Made with Passion. Will there be any questions that I can perhaps answer?
Okay, while the questions or whichever come in, maybe I'll just try playing it again. You can hear it, I guess, without the sound. Maybe at least you can see it. I will try both. We're going to try and see whether this works. Just to share, I mean, like, so if you see all the range of different activities that were done, right? So it was even right down to the partnership, all the way down to sell. So in this case, it's the e-commerce platform we worked with, which is Chris Shop. So you'd see how it was all the way down, and this is outdoor. Street banners that you see in the various stores itself, right down from a label to all the packaging that is around that. So, I mean, on that note, I thought we can maybe just have a bit of a conversation. Sorry about the audio. I don't know why it seemed to work when we tested it earlier.
There's a question about where was this video used. So this is a montage video that Rowena put together for the seminar and sort of like a recap. But much of the content went on IG and Facebook. I just wanted to highlight as well that the campaign actually started really small on social, but because we started a movement, or we were very purpose driven in wanting to really show the quality and the power of local brands. I think some of the bigger e-commerce platforms jumped on board because they wanted to see how they could help. So that was really how Chris Shop came on board to be an e-retailer after much cajoling and lobbying. So I think maybe one takeaway is when the purpose is very clear and there's good for a big community, there usually will be other brands who want to jump on board to be your partners.
There's another question that I saw, something about how about doing more to connect what commercial brands are doing separately to what they can do to contribute collectively to building Singapore's country brand. So I think this is really interesting. And honestly, this is very close to Lynette's heart because for a long time, that's exactly how Made with Passion came about, right? And it started as really this thought of what more can we do for local brands, right? And to be able to tell that story and give them a much bigger platform to be able to tell that story. And there are obviously grants available, things like that, that are, depending on the sector you're from. So totally agree that, it's one of those that has to be an ongoing initiative, and something, and when we say more that is done, more that can be done, even when we're telling our story, we're showcasing these brands, putting spotlights on them. So yeah, absolutely agree with the point. And actually that is the motivation to have done what we did with Made with Passion. That is also why Made with Passion wasn't a flash in the pan. It was something that was done, like Lynette said, it started small and then we worked collectively with the brands, and every time there is an opportunity. So for example, as we're pushing something to sell, we would do something with Chris Shop. So that also helps collectively. So, I agree with the point of it, but of course, more that can be done. I think it's one of those for an ongoing conversation. And it's something that even, I thought it was quite clever and smart to engage with the agencies. And sometimes when I have conversations with clients, they're not even engaged with the agency that is so that's something that more and more where people are starting to do. So for example, I gave the example of the Singapore Food Agency earlier, right? And a lot of their purpose is aligned to what is important in the country, healthier eating, obviously trying to get Singapore products out to other markets, all of these things. So I think maybe that's a good place to look at also. So you look at your purpose, look at what you think is authentic about your brand. How do you want to share those values? And then also look around you, look left, look right, see who else could you be partnering with? Is there an association? Are there members of a particular community that you can come together and do something and share, and therefore then be able to do it in a bigger and more impactful way?
If I can jump in, and thanks so much, Rick, for the question. A really, really good one. I think one of the things, just to bring it back to perhaps an example from the arts, we have an amazing community of extremely talented singers. And you've seen that with the bus commercials, dancers and writers and filmmakers and craftsmen and visual artists. As marketeers, a lot of our work is distinguished and is distinctive when there's a point of view, there's a great message, a meaningful one, and if it's creatively executed. Creativity is key. So one of the ways I think many local brands and international brands, which we've talked about, purpose is really about, I guess, bringing the good back to the community that you live in. One of the ways would be, can we think about how we can actually work with a community of local artists to feature them and to work with them, like the bus commercials, in your work, in your brand work, whether it's a local musician or a poet or a visual artist. This is another way of working with the community. And in doing so, when more and more people see it, I guess, Rick, to answer your question, it will build the Singapore brand.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think like it's also sometimes it's also about pitching, right? Sometimes we have an idea. I mean, bus commercials was an idea from the agency, and then we went to Mediacorp with it. And Mediacorp was like, this is perfect, you know, and we came together with it. We came together, and honestly, that's how we made it happen. It was really Mediacorp that helped make it happen, you know, because they have that connection, all of that. And I think Mediacorp's always also looking for ideas. So if you have anything that you think could be interesting and you would like support, you know, in addition to looking at the arts, I mean, Mediacorp is somewhere you can look at to pitch this. I think there's another question that's come in, Lynette, a marketeer from an FMCG SME where the marketing budget is low. Would you have any advice on how to show creativity while trying to build up my organization branding and to also showcase sustainability in the marketing work that we do?
Okay, I'm going to unpack that question. I think there are like 3 mini questions in there. So one is about showing creativity. The other one is really about showcasing sustainability. And I think the common thread is low budget. I think one of the things that I found as a marketeer, that when there's a tight budget, okay, maybe let me just reframe this. I think when marketeers think about campaigns, they often think, oh my goodness, it's got to be some big sexy creative idea, and there needs to be a lot of tremendous media spend. I would say no, and this is where Rowena might kill me a little bit. I think we need to think across an integrated marketing plan, right? And a lot of earned media and comms pitching and working with the media on stories, if there's a really good one, doesn't cost a lot of money. And the other piece, which that we are trying to communicate here as well, if we start small on social, on digital, and find a coalition of partners, the cost upfront is also divided. The other piece is really about sustainability. I think one of the ways, one of the very powerful tools in the modern marketeers arsenal of a suite of tools to call upon is really working with key opinion leaders and influencers. And we have many different types of influencers across many different beats and verticals, you know, whether they are food specialists or whether they are a beauty influencer, or they feel very passionately about sustainability. And of course, if on the budget, we can always work with the micro influencers. But what I've found is when the purpose is very clear and there's a very strong give back to the community, big brands and big influencers want to work with you because the message and the purpose is very true and clear. So I think the idea of brand partnerships with another brand is also another way that a smaller SME, FMCG brand can also think about launching a campaign. So I guess the few tips are back to working the community or through partnerships with another brand. Definitely, the way to start is digital on social, building your own platforms and working and partnering with other bigger platforms. And the last two would be an earn strategy is critical, and to very choicefully work with key opinion leaders and influencers who love your brand and want to work with your brand. I hope that's useful.
And I'm gonna like put in a little pitch for the Association of Advertising and Marketing here. I mean, and this is something because, you know, all of us, right, who sit on it, whether you're a brand, whether you're an agency, whether you're a, you know, a client brand or an agency or a media agency or a creative agency or even a media platform like, you know, your Meta, your TikToks, all of us, we all are very, very passionate about this agenda. We are all very, very passionate about not just brand purpose, but also around the whole space around sustainability, doing what we need to do for our planet. What can we do to reduce the carbon footprint? You know, we've all been challenged with the country's green plan, right? But it's also about what each of us will do. And as individuals, both Lynette and me, you know, for me, I have 2 daughters, and I remember having a conversation with my daughter and saying that, you know, something, and I mentioned that, you know, maybe your husband one day, or your, you know, whoever you marry one day, and she goes and she looks at me, well, if we go on the way we do, we don't have a planet in 40 years. So I'm not sure about doing this. So I mean, the parts that we need to play for our brand and as individuals, also for our children, for the community at large, we all need to step up and do so much more. So I would urge everyone, as you're thinking even about your brand, about how do I get this coalition together, really, you know, come forward and talk to the Association of Advertising and Marketing, because we're also trying to band everyone together and be stronger with this agenda. How do we go out there and reduce carbon footprint? You know, what are some of the best ways that some of the markets outside that we can learn from to be able to do that? So yeah, so that was the one thing I wanted to say. I think we can do we have one last question before we wrap? Because I'm conscious we're supposed to wrap at 11, and I know they want to share something. Do we have anything?
As we're looking for a question, I just want to share a piece of work that I found very meaningful, and I think it was done on a small budget with an influencer. So Body Shop had a campaign, I think it was sometime last year, and if you look at Body Shop's values and purpose, it's really a lot of it about sustainability, but quite a fair bit about Body Shop is about empowering women, and we've seen many beauty brands going down the route of empowering women. But what really stood out for me for the Body Shop campaign was they actually worked with a beautiful disabled influencer, and I think the story was really to show that beauty is important for all, and it was a very, very empowering campaign that moved me. And go take a look at it. And the influencer, her name is Zoe Zora. She's gorgeous, and she has a lot to say about her purpose. And I thought the marriage between a commercial brand, a beauty brand, and very purposeful influencer, I thought that was very well done.
Yeah, very nice. Very nice. Yeah, so I think on that note, just wanted to thank everyone. I wanted to say a huge thank you to Lynette. I mean, it's obviously something we talk so much about. We have, you know, conversations about continuously, and no one has like the perfect answer, but it's an ongoing effort. And I think the more we do, the better we will be also as a society at large. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for all of your comments and all of that. It's been wonderful. I think Chris wanted to say a few words. Hi, Chris.
Hi. Good morning, everyone. My name is Chris. I represent the Association of Advertising and Marketing Singapore, or AAMS, the trade association for the ad marcom sector. In the last hour, we've heard some good examples of purpose-driven marketing for better results. We hope that many of you are inspired to start rethinking your approach to campaigns in a new way, and to start pivoting to values and purpose-driven marketing. At AAMS, we believe ultimately that it comes down to having skilled people in your team to help navigate the challenges faced. And we must all start with a good basic understanding of what marketing is about. So at AAMS, we offer government-funded courses that focus on the fundamentals of digital marketing for new hires in your company. Your new hires can be registered in our 6-month Career Conversion Program, or CCP, class modules. Eligible employees may receive 70% course fee funding and up to 90% of salary support for up to a year. The topics you see on the screen is what we have currently, and we'll be rolling out new modules in the coming months. So a bit of background about ourselves. We started in 1948 as 4As, and we merged with the Institute of Advertising Singapore, or IAS, in 2019, resulting in AAMS. There are also a lot of other initiatives, competitions, and training sessions that we organize. We've just launched a guide on best practices for pitching, and it's available for free. So you can see there are a lot of areas for us that we can work together with you on. So drop me an email if you're keen to find out more. The details are on the screen, or you can come to our website, aams.org.sg, to find out more. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.